Thank you very much. Well, thank you all for coming this morning. I'm going to be talking about developments in epilepsy science and doing that in 15 minutes. It's a bit like trying to read War and Peace over a cup of tea. So I'm just going to summarize, I think, the main thrust of where things are headed. And as Helen has said, genomics is a big component of that. And genomics fits into a sort of new buzz phrase in medicine, which is precision medicine. So you can see this here. The idea of precision medicine, I'll go on to discuss. It's aiming to get the best treatment for everyone with epilepsy and achieving that progress through better understanding. And this is something that actually is happening across the world. You've probably heard President Obama talking about precision medicine and putting a huge amount of resource into that. It's happening in Asia and it's happening in the UK. And the UK government has launched lots of programs to try and enable precision medicine. And this is a slide taken from one of their quangos, the UK Precision Medicine Catapult. And in summary, what this is about is getting the right treatment for each person with whatever condition they have, in our case, of course, epilepsy. And what precision medicine does is combine precise diagnosis with precise treatment. And that involves a lot of analysis of a lot of information. And so you can go through this series of steps, trying to get the right information together so you get the right diagnosis. Because as we know, epilepsy is not one thing. There's lots of different types of epilepsy. And we need to try and work out for each person what sort of epilepsy they have, and therefore what the best treatment might be. These are ambitious aims, and I think we have to be aware of that. These are not things that are going to happen overnight. But we're now in a position to try to move towards that. And as Helen was saying, the genomics research that will be happening at Chalfont will help that happen. And so in summary, what this is about is the right, for example, the right dose of the right drug for the right person at the right time. It might not always be a drug, actually. It might be something else. It might be a diet. It might be surgery. There may be other ways in which seizures can be treated and epilepsy as a whole managed. This is not new, actually. This is something of a bit of a sleight of hand from various interested parties because, of course, this is what, hopefully, we've always been trying to do. And this is Sir William Gowers, who many people regard as one of the most important thinkers in epilepsy that there has been. And over 100 years ago now, he was already saying this, actually. And one of the things he said was just about humour. And this is real life. This is what it's about. So by understanding more about each individual and the cause of their epilepsy, and genomics is an important part of that, then hopefully we can get better treatment and see this sort of outcome for many more people who have epilepsy that may be as severe as Aidan's. And I'd like to thank you again for your permission to present Aidan's case. So all of this needs a lot of information. Even though we're focusing on the individual, you can only really understand what's happening for the individual by studying a lot of people who have epilepsy. So it's a bit like, imagine if you're lucky enough to have an oak tree in your garden, and you wonder if one of the branches in it is a bit dodgy and might be about to fall off and kill you. So you go and look at the oak tree and you study it in great detail and you can work out something about your own oak tree. But you don't really know whether that branch is going to fall off or not until you know a lot about lots of oak trees. You have to look at forests of oak trees. And then you can work out whether that particular branch is actually what oak trees do or whether actually it is dodgy and you need to lop it off. And Epilepsy Society is doing this. We are joining the world of big data, if you like. This is another phrase that's going around a lot at the moment, and Epilepsy Society leads a lot of these efforts or takes part in these efforts. Here's one. This is an effort that we're involved in. Actually, we're leading. It's called EpiPGX. It involves all those countries across Europe, and we're looking at information from thousands, literally thousands of people with epilepsy, including their genetic information. And by putting all that information together, we're hoping to understand better why some drugs might work for some people, why other drugs don't work for some people, and why sometimes drugs cause severe side effects. So, for example, nasty rashes, or even effects that can affect the thinking, for example, and make people feel depressed or psychotic. And so as a result of looking at the forest, if you like, we're beginning to understand much more about how drugs work and how genetics influence that. And we're able to get back to each individual and understand, therefore, what might be affecting them as individuals by studying lots of people with epilepsy, by studying big data. We're doing the same with imaging. So you'll know that, of course, MRI is an important investigation that many people with epilepsy will have. It can give us really lots of information. This is a slide from John Duncan you might have seen before. John's leading an amazing program looking at all different aspects of imaging. And what we're doing is to actually do that on an international scale. And we're now part of a study where there are over 2,000 scans from people from 5 continents across the world, and putting all that together to try and understand changes at each individual level. And that will also, of course, work with the genomics that we're also doing. So, by putting all this information together, you get another layer of discovery, if you like, another layer of information that can help you understand each individual's epilepsy better. So we talked about forests, looking at thousands of people who have epilepsy. Each individual scan, you could imagine, is like an oak tree. And now we're going down to the level of the acorn, or even the bud before the acorn. So this is work from Matthew Walker in our group, working at UCL, looking at trying to understand, for example, why the ketogenic diet might work for some people. What Matthew and others working with him were able to show was that there's some components of the diet that seem to have a really important effect on the way that certain parts of the brain work. So this is actually a hugely magnified picture of one very, very tiny bit that sits in every cell in your brain and that affects the way the brain is active. And what Matthew and his colleagues were able to show was that one part, this pointer's not working, I'm afraid, but one part down here that's present in the ketogenic diet has a specific effect on the way that the brain works. So by adding all of these different types of information, we can get a much better understanding of each individual's epilepsy, as we did for Aidan, and begin hopefully to work out what the right treatment is for each individual and get that to people at the right time, hopefully as soon as their seizures start. So here's another example of where genomics has helped us to do that. And has shown us another angle of this, another facet. So this is an EEG recording. I'm sure most of you will be familiar with this. The top panel represents the EEG recording from somebody who was having lots and lots of seizures, a bit like Aidan, having so many seizures that they really couldn't do anything else. And this is what we call an epileptic encephalopathy. So many seizures that actually thinking was difficult, speaking was almost impossible, and doing anything beyond that was just really not possible. So if you record the EEG at that time, you can see that every now and then there's this sort of abnormality that you see, which is like a very small epileptic seizure, and sometimes that was bigger and actually visible to the family, for example. Now, it turned out that through genomics, it was possible to establish the cause of this person's epilepsy. It wasn't just epilepsy, it was a very specific condition, like all the epilepsies are, a very specific condition. And it turned out that actually there was a drug out there on the market already which was exactly the right drug for this problem. It was not a drug that was recognized as an anti-epileptic drug, but it was repurposed. Its use was changed from what it had intended to be used for, what it had been developed to be used for, to something else, in this case, epilepsy. And it was exactly the right drug for this person. And that was established through the application of genomics in this person's case. And when this person was given this drug, their seizures became much, much better. And in fact, now they're hardly having seizures. And you can see this is reflected in the EEG. So this occurred, this is about 10 seconds of recording. And this was happening on every page. Whereas here you can see another page, nothing. And in fact, this person's hardly having any seizures now and is significantly better with a much better quality of life and is beginning to be able to interact with family much more than they were before, just in the way that we've seen that happen for Aidan. So this kind of thing can happen. I think we have to be careful and be clear that this isn't going to happen for every single epilepsy, because we don't understand every single epilepsy as well as we would like to. But this is demonstrating how that can become possible by thinking about things more and by applying a whole series of tests, including genomics, to work out what's wrong in each particular individual and see if we can get better treatment. And this repurposing of drugs is an important thing because a lot of money has gone into developing drugs of all different sorts. And sometimes a drug you develop for one condition turns out to actually be a very good drug for another condition. And you can save a lot of money and time by repurposing one drug for another instead of spending another 5 years and however many billions of pounds trying to develop it. But it also raises other points that we have to think about, which is that we have to change the way that we and the medical profession and the regulatory environment works. Because actually, it's proving quite difficult to do this. This is a case from my colleagues in Europe. We have someone in here in the UK who I see at Chalfont who's in the same position, and it's taken months to get to the point where we are now, where we're hoping to be able to start this drug. So we have to take policymakers with us. We have to try and influence policymakers to allow precision medicine to actually happen. There's no good talking about it if the regulatory environment doesn't permit it. So I'm going to tell you another little story now about when one of the arrows has moved in this slide. I'm sorry about that. About when I was a junior doctor. It's a long time ago now, and I was told when I was a junior doctor that I was going to take part in a clinical trial. I wasn't asked, I wasn't informed, there was no consent involved. I was told I was going to take part in this clinical trial. And what was going to happen was that I was going to take this tablet. I was going to take this tablet for 2 weeks, and before I took it, they're going to do a blood test, and then they're going to give me this tablet for 2 weeks while I'm walking on the wards, and then they'll do a blood test at the end of the 2 weeks to see what effect the tablet has. That was all I was told. Except that as I was leaving, they said, oh, by the way, it's a steroid tablet. So, of course, because as we've heard about Imperious consultants, although things have changed hopefully since then, but anyway, Imperious consultants said, you're going to take this, so I took the tablet, and on the first day I thought, there's something funny about this tablet. The second day I was feeling a bit edgy, and the third day I knew I could fly. I knew it. I knew I could fly. And of course, I knew also that I couldn't fly, and I knew that I must stop taking this tablet. So I stopped taking the tablet. I got into some trouble with my consultant, but there we are. There was no consent involved here, so I stopped taking it. But that taught me a lesson, I suppose, about how we deal with tablets. And there is a whole science behind taking tablets and not taking tablets. And why is it sometimes people do take tablets and sometimes they don't take tablets? There are reasons behind these things, and there are reasons that we can address. There are reasons that we can explore. And in my case, I didn't take them because it was an uninformed clinical trial, and they were making me feel odd, and they hadn't said anything about this. So it's important to think about all these different layers, because not only is it that we need to find out what it is that's causing each individual's epilepsy, but we have to think about what the tablets do and how we can deal with the side effects, especially the common side effects that people have. And so we've started looking at that in the Epilepsy Society. We did a survey of over 1,000 people and began to learn about people's individual experiences of taking tablets or not taking tablets and what motivated them to do those things. So lots of different layers to this. And as we've heard, there's another layer, which is that even if you do all of this, even if you find the cause of an epilepsy or the causes of lots of epilepsy, it's no good unless it gets to people who need it. And we've heard already today about the disparities in provision of epilepsy care across the country. There's no reason why a greater proportion of people in one part of the country should be seizure-free than another. It's not that it's a different sort of epilepsy. There are other factors involved here. So as well as doing all of this, we have to make sure that the best treatment gets out to everybody who has epilepsy and that the best information gets out there. And this is something that we're now working together with European colleagues on. Actually, we're putting in an application to the European Union to try and fund this sort of work so that we can get everyone's expertise to everybody who needs it. And this is going to be another important component of precision medicine. The science is fundamental, but the delivery is also important. So, I suppose the science of epilepsy, then, this is the end of War and Peace, is that we need a holistic approach. There are all these layers of the science, all the layers of the discovery, all the things that, for example, genomics can do, and it can make a huge impact. And certainly we're going to be doing that, and we're going to be doing huge data analyses on lots of scans and lots of genetic data from people with epilepsy. There's also, of course, things that we can learn from the way people experience epilepsy, for example, what they're thinking about tablets and so on. We have to put all that together, and that's what precision medicine is. It's getting the right treatment for the right person at the right time in the right way. And hopefully that is something that we will continue to develop at Epilepsy Society, and the genomics will be a big part of that. So I think I'll stop there, and thank you for your time.